Hi, I'm Eben Pagan. Welcome to Altitude. This is what we call Top Gun entrepreneur training. In this program, I'm going to teach you everything possible about how to grow a business and how to take your business from the startup phase up to the $10 million a year level and beyond. I'm going to teach you everything I've learned in almost 15 years in business. We're going to part the curtains, and we're going to show you all the secrets. We're going to reveal things that we've never revealed to anyone ever. And in the format of the program, we're going to be focusing on 5 key areas of your business. We're going to be focusing on you, your market, your marketing, your people, and your systems. And what I've discovered is that businesses that get stuck at a certain point, where they hit a glass ceiling or they just can't get to the next level, that there's typically something holding them back. And when I interact with the entrepreneurs who are running and growing these businesses, I find that in many or even most cases, that something that's holding them back is not obvious to them. They can't see it. It's concealed in some way. And upon kind of further inspection, what I've found is that it's usually something in one of these 5 areas. And it typically comes down to the fact that they weren't focused on all 5 areas as they were growing their business. They were only focused on 1 or 2. They were only focused on their people, or only focused on their market, or on their marketing. They weren't focused on you, your market, your marketing, your people, and your systems. And what I found is that entrepreneurs and businesses that focus on all 5 areas and develop all 5 areas as they're growing tend to succeed and grow without a lot of friction. They grow more smoothly. And so we're going to focus on all 5, and the format of this program is going to be that we're going to cover each one in each section, and we're going to go through the whole rotation of them maybe 5 times. So we're going to go you, your market, your marketing, your people, your systems. You, your market, your marketing, your people, your systems. And we're going to do that so that we can zoom from the whole to the part, to the whole to the part. We're going to zoom in, we're going to zoom out. And it's important for you to see how all of the different pieces integrate. It's important to see how getting the market right and having the right product and service mix influences your marketing. And it's important to see how having the right people on your team affects the systems that get built in your business. And it's important to see how all of those things affect you and how you affect all of those things. So this is an integrated or an integral process, and it's important that you focus on all 5 areas. Several years ago, I used to teach on stage at a program, and there was another man that taught at that program. His name was Mike Hardwick. And Mike, if you see this, hi, and how are you doing? And Mike used to tell this story and talk about a research project that was done by a major university. And I never went and looked it up because the concept was so great that I didn't want to invalidate it if it wasn't true. But he was a great guy and a very successful and smart guy. So it comes from a good source. And he talked about a study that this university did that delved into the factors of success. And in this particular study, they went and studied salespeople who were making more than $250,000 a year in sales. And they looked for the commonalities. And of all of the different factors that they looked at and researched, and they goofed around trying to figure out what was the key to being successful, they found that there was one key factor. And it's something that I like to talk about, and it's something that you should write down in your notes, in your journal. This key factor was speed of implementation. Speed of implementation. Now, what is speed of implementation? Speed of implementation means the distance between the time that you hear something and you learn something and the time that you put it into action. And what this study found is that those highly successful people got an idea and bam, they put it right into action immediately. They didn't sit around and think about it and say, oh, I don't know if that's a good idea. Let me talk to 27 of my friends who aren't that successful to see what they think of it. They just did it. They implemented. And I think if you look around at the successful people in your life, the successful people that you have seen in business and in other areas of life, that you'll find that they have this trait in common, but it's not obvious and it's kind of counterintuitive. It's a little bit of a ready, fire, aim approach, but it's a personal approach, speed of implementation. And so what I want to encourage you to do is to implement ideas that make sense, that you think can help your business succeed as fast as you can. Implement them as soon as you can. And to that end, I want to have a little bit of fun, and I want to have, let's just say, a little contest, a little gamesmanship, so to speak. What I want to see is if someone here, I want to see if many someone's here, can implement one of the ideas from this program during the program and come back and report some results. Maybe you'll learn about a new way to interact with your customers, and you'll go up to your room at night and you'll write an email and you'll send it out to them and you'll come back with some results. Maybe you'll learn about a new way to connect with your team members or to get them to help you planning something, and you'll send out an email and you'll come back with some results. Maybe you'll host a conference call with your team and you'll do a quick little 15-minute training with them and you'll come back with some results. And I want to reward the behavior that I want to encourage by throwing out there that the winner of this little fun contest that we're going to have will get a 2-hour marketing makeover by me personally, where I will take a look at all your marketing and I will spend 2 hours with you, one-to-one, on the telephone, and I will help you improve it. Value, probably $10,000. So someone's going to win that, and they're going to implement and get the best results. And what we'll do at the end is we'll have a little judging competition where we'll judge the winner by the round of applause. Okay, so who's willing to implement during this program? Implement some idea. Okay, good. If you didn't raise your hand, I'm a little concerned about you already. So there's a skill that we learn when we are kids, and it's an incredible skill. It is a spectacular achievement of the human mind, cognitive system, whatever you want to call it. And it's the skill of seeing another person's perspective, being able to understand what it's like to have an experience from over there instead of in here. I read about an experiment that they did with children, where they took a group of 3-year-olds and they put them in a room, and they sat them at a table, and they took a crayon box, and they opened up the crayon box, and they took out the crayons right in front of the 3-year-old, so the 3-year-old could see what was going on. And then they took a piece of candy, and they stuck it in the crayon box, and then closed it. So the 3-year-old, they're with it enough to know that there's candy in that box and not crayons. Then they had an adult come into the room, sit down at the table, and they said to the child, they said, "What does that adult think is in that box?" And what does the 3-year-old say? Candy. The 3-year-old knows that there's candy in there, and that must be what everybody thinks. That must be the way that it is. Well, if you take 5-year-olds and you put them in that same experiment, and you empty out the crayon box, and you put the piece of candy in there, and you put it on the table, and you have an adult come in, and you say to the 5-year-old, "What does that adult think is in there?" The 5-year-old will look at you and be like, "What do you think, I'm stupid?" The adult thinks that there's crayons in there. Something happens between the ages of 3 and 5 where we cultivate the ability to see through the eyes of another person. Have empathy, or whatever you might call it. Now, as I've developed in business, one of the things that I've found is that most business problems, in one way or another, come back to this root problem of not being able to understand the perspective of another human being. Not be able to get out of your own stuff and go into theirs. In fact, I've researched this enough, I actually can't find a word in the English language that means shutting down your own system, going and understanding what it's like to be another person, and then seeing through their eyes, and then behaving based on that. No word. We don't have a word for that. So I'm going to call it see-through. That's what I'm going to refer to it as, see-through. And it's just a short little word for seeing through the eyes of another person, experiencing the world through their view. And when you do this, what you do is you start to understand their motivations. and you start to understand their desires, and you start to have the ability to communicate with them in a way that you didn't have before. And when you get good at this ability that we're calling see-through, all of a sudden, the crazy behavior of humans, stuff that didn't make any sense, things like emotions that don't seem to be logical, they come into focus, they come into view, and you can start working with them. So this is a theme that we're going to come back to throughout the program over and over and over, and I want you to notice how in the exercises that we do, in the work that I do with other people, that it keeps coming back to this. This is at the root, at the heart of it all. And we'll work more on this a little bit later. So one of the realizations also that I have had, and these are just the things I've observed in life, is that great things typically only happen in your life, things that you make happen, when you're in some way or another outside of your comfort zone. And I don't just say that as a little, cute program trick. That's not rhetoric. It's true. Think about the greatest things that you have made happen in your life. Think about the things where you have made something spectacular or extraordinary happen. Typically, you were on your edge. You were a little outside of your comfort zone. You were in territory where you didn't quite know what to do, but you were making it happen. And so I think that we are here to be completely immersed in success and in a way to get outside of our comfort zone. And I think that most of the time when we go to participate in programs like this or events like this or gatherings like this, that we go with an idealized view. This is going to be this wonderful, fun, sweet, nice, warm feeling. And I hope that we get some sweet, nice, and warm feelings out of this, and that does go very well. But I think it's important for you, if you want to be successful, to get a little bit outside of your comfort zone. And I see it as my role, my responsibility actually, to push you out to that edge. Not over the edge so that you break down and freak out. Maybe a little. That's sometimes fun too. But to just get you a little beyond where you're used to being. And so in the spirit of that, let's get started immediately. Total silence. I love that. There's a great quote that I read by a guy named Bo Peabody, who's a very successful intranet entrepreneur, started Tripod and some other companies and made himself a huge amount of money. And his quote is, "I was smart enough to know that I was getting lucky." You might want to write that one down. Great quote. I was smart enough to know that I was getting lucky. Bo Peabody. And to begin the story of our business, I'd like to let you know that this business, it wasn't like every business that I ever did was successful and everything I tried turned into gold. I've tried many different things. Some of them worked a little bit. Most of them didn't work very much at all. This was the one that worked. And I have to just say, I think I was smart enough to know that I was getting lucky. I think that we all get about the same amount of luck in life. We all get those lucky breaks that show up. And the difference between those that are dramatically successful and those that are dramatically unsuccessful is that those that are dramatically successful say, there's one of those opportunities, and I need to take it and mine it and ride it. And when I saw this take off, I said, this deserves all of my focus. We hit the market just right. We hit the nail on the head. Now there are some strategizing and marketing and market kind of niche creation tools that I'm going to share with you that I used to do that, and there were a lot of factors going in my favor, but I really believe that I was smart enough to know that I was getting lucky. And I say that because I want you to be smart enough to know that you're getting lucky when it happens. And when you have a win, I want to make sure that you don't abandon it and get on to something else. I want to make sure that you take that win and you develop it. You take it deep, you mine it. You do whatever you can to get everything you can out of it before you go on to the next thing just because you happen to be bored with it. Does that make sense? I was smart enough to know that I was getting lucky. And that is how this started. And most of what you're going to see after that is just doing the right things in the right order, putting one foot in front of the other and taking advantage of it. Now, what I think of altitude as, this is my own view, is almost something like the business potential movement. And I say that because in psychology and in therapy and kind of people development, there are a couple of different mindsets. And the common mindset is this mindset of people are broken, let's fix them. And what happens when you come from that paradigm in a lot of cases is you're trying to get people back to zero. So people are broken, they're below zero, you're trying to get them back up to zero, instead of asking the question, how high is high? How high could we go if we had no limit? And what if we didn't worry too much about the problems? What if we started strong and we figured out how to just develop ourselves into the strongest, most powerful business people and businesses that we could be? And so my approach is going to be a little bit different. We're going to be solving some problems here, but we're mostly going to be focused on taking advantage of opportunities and taking a strength or taking a discovery and growing it, starting above zero and going very high. Potential. And if you could help me with that, if you could help create that by thinking in that mindset, and instead of being stuck in, oh, I can't do that, or I don't know if that'll work for me, or my mom would see that advertising and she'd get very upset and that doesn't make very much sense to me, or what would my competitors say? Instead of whining and arguing, how about starting strong and finding things to make you stronger? When they build a skyscraper up into the sky, where do you think they start? You think they start by putting the facade on? No, not so much. You think they start by putting the furniture in the offices? No. There's a massive amount of prep work that goes into building a skyscraper. And what we do is we go into cities and we look up at them and we say, oh, wow, that's beautiful. Well, skyscrapers require a very careful approach, because if it's not built right and it falls, it's bad. As they say, it's a bad thing. You know, that whole good, bad, it's definitely over on the bad side. So they have to spend some time creating a proper foundation. Are you familiar with the Petronas Towers in Malaysia? They were the tallest buildings in the world for 6 years, up until very recently. Something like 1,485 feet tall, almost 1,500 feet tall. They're huge. Guess how deep the foundation is for those buildings? 394 feet. Almost 400 feet into the ground to build a 1,500-foot structure on the top. There's a little view of them from Wikipedia. Now, when most people think, I'm going to go into the skyscraper building business, do you think that they focus on learning to build foundations? Do you think that's where they're thinking when they go into it? I don't think so. And anyone that's ever had structural problems in their house understands just how important it is to have a good foundation. Structural problems create huge issues down the road. And we're going to talk a lot about creating conditions and structures in your business, but I just want to put that metaphor in your mind. And another one that's been very meaningful to me that I think about a lot, someone once said, I don't remember who this was, is when you go out on a summer day and you walk under a huge, beautiful oak tree to get some shade, and it's this amazing creation. It's complex and simple at the same time. It's just beautiful. And you're standing there and you put your hand on it and you look up. You don't realize that just like you're surrounded on the top by this tree, below you is another structure that looks very similar. And you're almost completely surrounded by this entity or this organism. Now, why is it that we don't think, wow, I so appreciate the root system of this tree? Right? We can't see it. It's not obvious. It's not something that's right in front of us. We just stand there and say, oh, this thing's beautiful, and we think that the roots probably go 2 inches underground and it's all good. If you've ever had trees growing through your plumbing, like someone recently on our team, you understand that they can be very tenacious, and life always finds a way. But that foundation under the tree is what's required to grow the big tree. My friend Alex Mondosian talks about the difference between his privet trees that grow out around his house and a bamboo tree. The privet tree, you plant it, and it grows something like a foot a year. Boom, they grow up quickly. They put them in new developments so that they can quickly have landscaping. Some species of bamboo, they take 3 years of growing root systems underground before they even sprout. But then once they sprout, they can grow at a rate of up to 2 to 3 feet a day because they built the root system and the foundation first. So those are some metaphors that have been very useful to me that I like to reflect on and think about, that help me mirror what I need to do out in the real world, out here with my business. So I hope those are useful to you. One other interesting mindset or approach that I've seen that is fascinating to me is that success, whatever that means, but success, the path to it, the road that you must follow, the steps that you must take, are typically, number one, not obvious, and number two, more often than not, in my own experience, counterintuitive. So the paths to success are not obvious and counterintuitive. Now that's kind of a pain in the butt, actually, if you want to be successful. But look back at your own life. Think about those things that made the difference. The critical little thing that happened, the introduction, the person you met, the call you decided to make, whatever it was that took you to the next level, and put them all together and look at them and then say, was that an obvious step? Was that an intuitive step? Is that something that most people would have done? And the answer is almost always no. Is this making sense? Are you getting this? Now, we humans don't like to say, oh, I need a lot of help here. Someone needs to tell me how to do things right. We like to think we get it. We think we know all the answers. Well, I'm smart. I would know what to do in every situation. And what I have discovered is that in this idea of altitude, and we'll talk more about this later, but the idea of getting altitude, that zooming out, that seeing things from another perspective, that looking for the counterintuitive, we have mechanisms, I am convinced, in our mind, body, emotional systems that actively prevent us from success. They actively prevent us from getting altitude and from seeing the path to success or looking for the path to success. Why? Because we want to think that we already know. I already know the answers. When I come to the opportunity, I'm just going to take advantage of it. I'm going to do it. Let me give you a couple of examples here. These are just a few that I wrote down, things that we'll be covering more in the program. So it's intuitive to focus on your own needs in any situation and to focus on what you're getting. It's not obvious, and it's counterintuitive to put all your focus on the needs of the other person in the situation. It's not intuitive. In fact, even the people I know who are the best at it still have to kind of flip it on and really work at it to do a good job. I'm not talking about mindless, I'll just do whatever you say. I'm talking about consciousness here. Another one. It's intuitive to try to convince your customer to buy what you're selling. That's the intuitive thing. Here's what I'm selling. You should buy it, and here are the reasons. It's counterintuitive and not obvious to find a group of customers that has a need and say, what do you need that someone isn't fulfilling? And then create it, and then say, are you interested in this? It's counterintuitive. It's intuitive to humans to be the smart one or the important one in a relationship, to talk about themselves, to talk about their accomplishments, to go, oh, no, here's the way you do it. It's counterintuitive to let the other person be the smart one, to let the other person be the important one. Counterintuitive. intuitive in business for most entrepreneurs to pursue ideas that they like and to just keep sticking with them and working on them. It's like the crazy inventor that invented some bizarre device that allows you to, mow your lawn by remote control with a little camera, and yes, the thing's going to be great, and to work on it for 30 years and not have anybody buy it. Right? It's intuitive. It's counterintuitive to create an idea and then emotionally detach from it, put it out into the marketplace, and measure everything that happens, and then judge it on its own merit. Treat it like an external entity, almost. Counterintuitive. It's intuitive to spend and consume what you have right now. In fact, that's very intuitive to our culture these days. Just look at the way people treat junk food and credit cards. The intuitive thing is to consume right now. The non-obvious, very non-obvious, and very counterintuitive thing to do is to reinvest and allow compounding interest, what Einstein said might be the greatest miracle in the universe, to do its trick, right? It's intuitive to think right now, in the moment, short term. It's counterintuitive to think long term. It's intuitive to multitask. Do a lot of things at once. It's counterintuitive to focus on one thing, bring it to completion. Focus on the next thing, bring it to completion. It's intuitive to try to do everything you're doing in business well. It's counterintuitive to do one thing way better than well, and don't worry too much about the other stuff. Outsource it. Do whatever you have to do to just get it done. It's intuitive to try to take advantage of and grab every opportunity. Every time an opportunity comes up, go, yeah, I'm going to grab that one. It's counterintuitive to let all of those opportunities go by and don't get distracted by them. Very counterintuitive. It's intuitive to let situations, problems, things that go wrong, loss, upset you and get to your emotions and destabilize you and have you go, oh, no, not this. What am I going to do? It's counterintuitive to recognize whenever there's loss or friction or problem or drama and realize that there's going to be all kinds of opportunity in there and that you're getting a brief window to look at how your system and your people and other people and how everyone's behaving and learn all kinds of stuff. It's very counterintuitive to see loss or friction or problem as an amazing opportunity. Very counterintuitive. The point I'm trying to make, and I hope that I've gotten it across, and this is just my view, this is just the way I see the world. You can try this on if it works for you. In fact, you can try on all the ideas. If they work for you, great, use them. If not, toss them aside. My way isn't the best way. But it's interesting how the factors that lead to success are not obvious to the human. And in fact, they're counterintuitive. They're against or at an angle to or not natural to the way that we would automatically behave in this situation. And that is a huge challenge. And just like one of the other metaphors that I like to use a lot is, have you ever been to the county fair where they have all those different games that you can play? And the carney's back behind the thing. Hey, little lady, come over here. I'll give you a free toss. And then he says, watch how easy it is. And he takes the ball, he knocks over the pins, or he throws the thing into the basket, and you go, that can't be that hard. And then what do they say, right? I'll even give you a free try. You toss it, and you go, oh, it was almost there. And then they take your $10, and it keeps being almost there, and doesn't quite get over the line to there. Now, I, of course, being crazy and determined, when I want to win one of those games, what I do is I go over and I stand there and I just watch. And I try to find the trick. Because I know that there's a counterintuitive trick in there somewhere. There's something to do where at the last minute you put some spin on the ball or you do something that a regular human just wouldn't do. And once you know the trick, then it's easy. But they only usually let you win one animal, so it's not a good investment to spend 2 hours to get a $20 stuffed dog. So I don't spend too much of my time doing it. But that's what you need to do if you want to find success and you're experiencing the world through kind of the reality that I just gave to you there, is look for the trick. Look for the thing that's not obvious. Look for the thing that's counterintuitive. By the way, we all know that it's a lot easier to learn a language as a child or to play a musical instrument as a child, right? Who knows that one? Seen that one, right? Okay, right. Well, that's wrong. It's not easier to learn a language as a child or to play a musical instrument. I mean, it takes a kid, how long does it take a child to actually learn a language so they can speak it even reasonably well? Years. I've got a friend who likes to travel around the world, and he's got it down to a month now. He's got the process down to a month where he can be speaking the language in the land and communicating with people fluently. These folks over here were telling me that this is Wyatt, Marilyn Woodsmall, you're going to want to talk to them if you can. I can't explain how brilliant they are. They had a friend who was a language teacher. They were telling me that he could teach someone, and was paid a lot of money by Hollywood actors and what have you. He could teach someone to have the basics down of a language in 3 days. 3 days. We humans have these weird things that happen in our mind that prevent us from getting what we want. And what I need you to do is open up. I need you to open your mind a little bit and not get too trapped in where your mind automatically goes during this program. Because a lot of the stuff we're going to talk about is counterintuitive. A lot of this material will appear difficult or complex, but I'll walk you through the steps. Leonardo da Vinci had a nice quote. He said, "Every now and then go away, have a little relaxation, for when you come back to your work, your judgment will be surer. Go some distance away, because then the work appears smaller and more of it can be taken in at a glance, and lack of harmony and proportion is more readily seen." He was talking about altitude there. I don't know how he knew about it, how he copied my thing back then, but he seemed to have a sense for the counterintuitive. And the way I sum that up is get altitude. You've got to zoom out. You've got to get out of your perspective. I've got a question for you. What is value? You want to write this one down. What is value? And I've got another question for you. What is profit? When it comes to value, most people think value is money. That's what everyone translates value to, is money. That's the term we all use. Well, I've got news. Money has no intrinsic value anymore. It isn't worth anything. It's numbers on a sheet. It's a piece of paper that somebody printed some ink on. It is not like 100 years ago when you could get a gold coin and it was actually worth what it was worth. And if you needed to, you could hammer the gold coin into a ring or make a piece of jewelry. Or today, if it was made out of gold coin, you could make computer chips or a million other things out of it. There isn't any intrinsic value in money. And so I want you to, if you're open to it, stop thinking about value as being just money. Start thinking about value as being something else. Money is just a little exchange medium we use in between types of value to trade one type for another. But don't get caught up in thinking that the money is the value, because it is not. Read a little world history and find out that when banks collapse, countries collapse, and the value of the money goes to zero, and everyone wakes up and goes, that couldn't happen. The value isn't in the money. Likewise, profit, most people think of profit as being money. That's it. That's the only way they think of it. It's a great measuring stick, sure. But true value and true profit are something entirely different than money. To me, profit is something like taking two stars, two spectacular people, and putting them together and letting them work together for a year so that they have this human broadband connection where they can communicate quickly and they can get information across and they can work well together. And then saying, okay, now that we've worked together for a year, you guys are, the two of you together are worth like 5 times what you were individually. That is profit to me. I have now created some profit there in my business, some value in my business. Now, all the types of value and profit that I'm going to talk about, for the most part, are going to be those types. And what I hope is, like Warren Buffett's investment style, that by getting the value in the fundamentals, that it will reflect in the money. We'll talk about some money concepts too. And you'll hear people that have differing opinions from me. You'll hear there are going to be 2 or 3 people on this stage that have started, built, and run $100 million companies. Very, very successful people. 1 or 2 of them might disagree with me and say, no, it's all about the money. And that's okay. Differing opinions are okay. But I think if we had a conversation about it, you'd see that we would all agree that the value and the profit are really in the fundamentals. They're in the underlying structures and conditions. And the money is just one way of kind of monetizing the value. Another thing that I've seen that's a fascinating and counterintuitive process that we need to talk about and think about and master over the next few days before we get into the specifics is balancing creation with discovery. Write this one down. Balancing creation with discovery. Do you remember when I said I was, in Bo Peabody's words, I was smart enough to know I was getting lucky? Was he creating or discovering? There was a lot of discovery in there. Sure, he was creating things, but it was much more on the discovery end. And so instead of getting caught up trying to plan for success and think that you know how to make everything happen and it's definitely going to be this way, be open to what you discover on the way. Because oftentimes, as you're creating, something that you discover will take you down the path that will ultimately be your biggest success. And that's really what's happened to me and what's happened to a lot of other folks. So balance creation with discovery and be open to discovery. A couple of quick psychological principles I want to give you. 2 of the mechanisms that we have inside of our kind of cognitive emotional system that I think prevent us from success are what I call emotional estimation, and number 2, seeing only validation. So say these with me. I'm going to say them once and then I want you to repeat them. Emotional estimation and seeing only validation. Say them with me. Emotional estimation and seeing only validation. A lot of big, obscure words, but we'll dig into them a lot. Emotional estimation and seeing only validation. As it turns out, we humans are not very good at predicting how things in the future will make us feel. We're horrible at it. In fact, even experts who are trained, and they know this, are horrible at estimating how things in the future will make them feel. Now, emotional estimation actually has 2 sides. It's looking from now into the future and saying, if I do this, it will make me feel good, or if I avoid doing this, it'll make me feel bad. So predicting how you'll feel in the future. And the other side of emotional estimation is using your emotions to estimate something. Because I feel good about it, it's going to be good. Because I feel bad about it, it's going to be bad. If you've ever known someone that spent a lot of time investing in the stock market, you'll know what I'm talking about. Most of us are familiar with the studies they've done with lottery winners. They win the lottery. Something like, I don't remember what it is, 80% of them, 5 years after they win the lottery, are in worse financial condition than the day before they won the lottery. I was having a conversation with my mom. Hi, Mom, don't take this personally, please. I was having a conversation with my mom a couple of years ago, and I said, Mom, most people that win the lottery lose all the money and are less happy 5 years later. She was talking about something, money, wish I won the lottery kind of thing. And I was saying, let's work on some other things to solve that problem. And I said, yeah, so you'd probably lose all the money. I'd probably lose it all. I mean, that's what happens with people when they win the lottery. Look at the statistics. And she said, oh no, I would never lose all that money, right? That's that mechanism that we all have. I have it too. And that's the thing that blinds us and makes us lose all the money. the emotional estimation. And seeing only validation, and you want to put in parentheses after seeing only validation, put seeking, so it's seeing and seeking only validation. I once heard someone say that people don't go to therapy to get fixed, they go to therapy so that someone will sit there and say, "Oh, wow, that must have been hard. I'd feel the same way if I were you. That'll be $175 an hour." And I don't mean to criticize, I mean, I've known some spectacular and amazing therapists and so forth, but I think you get the point. And what do we do most of the time? We sit around and go, "Oh, yep, that's where I was right. Yep, that's where I'm smart. Oh, yeah, I was right there too. Oh, yeah. Oh, see, I was thinking of that thing before you even said it. I was just going to do that. Oh, you think that's good? You should have heard what I did in my past business with this other guy before we got arrested." So we just look for where we're right and we don't see where we're wrong. We just don't do it. Emotional estimation, seeing only validation. Examples we're going to talk more about in the program are hiring people that you like. Emotional estimation. Wow, I really like you. I got a good feeling about this. How do those usually turn out? Expensive. I'm talking money expensive here, too. I had one time where several years ago in the business, I found a great source of new leads for our business. They looked like they were great. They were converting at a high rate. And I said, okay, well, let's build some systems and set them up because we're going to be buying a lot of this type of lead. You could buy them by the million. Let's just say I was doing a little bit of emotional estimation. You ever test something or put something on the market or run an ad and all of a sudden you get all these results? And then you sit for days calculating how at $1,200 an hour, 24 hours a day, oh my God, and then you're like making Excel spreadsheets with how much money you're going to make and thinking about it. Who's ever done that when you had a little success? All right, great. And then what happens 97% of the time afterwards? It's just not, it doesn't work out quite that way, right? That's emotional estimation. And another one that's very common is this idea, this notion that we get that reaching the objective we want, reaching the goal that we want to reach in life is somehow going to permanently solve all of our problems. Again, weird, interesting, but we kind of all do it. I'm going to get to this goal, I'm going to make $5 million, and I'm going to get the $5 million in the bank. And then, that's it. All of my problems will be solved. And what we typically fail to take into consideration is it's still going to be you. You're going to bring you with you to that $5 million. Emotional estimation. So the answers to these things, and again, these are things we're going to be covering a lot in the program, are two little processes that I've kind of learned, modeled. You know, most of these have just come from the outside world, like most of the things I'm going to share. It's the combination that's important. Number one, write this down, data-driven decisions. Data-driven decisions. If you're not using some data that's coming from outside of this dome piece of yours to make your decisions, you're probably erring in some way. Data-driven decisions. And the other is a little formula that I like to use, and I call it test, model, project. Do a test, build a little model with the results, and then project. Test, model, and project. If you use these two little ideas, data-driven decisions and test, model, and project, it will help a lot. You'll at least be starting with a strategy or a process that will get you off on the right foot. And then if you can try and notice when you and other people are estimating emotionally and just looking for validation and for where you're right, I think you can do well. So we're going to talk about 5 areas in this program. You, your market, your marketing, your people, and your systems. Something that I have noticed about those 5 areas that's a cool little shortcut to use is that if you get the market part right, which is your target market, your audience, and the products and services that you sell to them, that market that you create. If you get that right, the marketing becomes pretty easy. The marketing almost takes care of itself. So if you get the market right, it just drives the marketing. And with the people and the systems, if you get the right people, you get the people part right, they will create and drive the systems. So that leaves you to drive the market and drive the people, and it will dramatically reduce how much time, effort, and energy you have to spend on the marketing and the systems. You're going upstream. I actually wrote this down as a little note. I guess this was one of my more enlightened and inspired moments. What I wrote is, if I have a secret to my success, it's to get the market right and the people right, and then test the hell out of everything and scale what works. Maybe that wasn't as funny as I thought it was. Test the hell out of everything and scale what works. Okay. Raise your hand if you're good at multitasking, doing a lot of things at once. I'm serious, that you're good at it. Raise your hand if you're really good at multitasking. Come on, I know there are more. We're going to try this one more time. Raise your hand if you're good at multitasking. Raise your hand. Okay, good. Good. Most of the people in the room. Now, what's fascinating about multitasking is that almost all of us, especially entrepreneurs, do it. And most of us are pretty good at it. And multitasking is a very cool discovery, especially if you're doing things like, let's say, cooking a meal. You want to put if you're going to make rice, you want to put the rice on before you stick something under the broiler that's going to only take 3 or 4 minutes to toast. And you got to coordinate everything, and you can let certain things cook and certain things marinate. It is a perfect place for multitasking. What I've found is that business, and especially for high-achieving entrepreneurs, is a horrible place for multitasking. And in fact, multitasking is almost a disease that's robbing us of much of our success. There's a place for multitasking in business, don't get me wrong, but most of the time you should not be multitasking. And any time that you're spending multitasking, probably right now, you are almost certainly robbing yourself. So can we start handing out those three handouts? The 2 gray zone handouts, and then the one content handout. So the first thing that we're looking at is this little document that says, get out of the gray zone. And let me introduce you to the gray zone. The gray zone is that place when you are not completely, fully engaged and focused doing the things that get you the highest benefit, result, profit, growth, and you're not completely unplugged, completely out, completely rejuvenating and relaxing. That's the gray zone. Does that make sense? Yes. When you're in the gray zone, you're typically multitasking. You're trying to do a lot of stuff at once. When you're out of the gray zone, what you've done is you've taken all of that high-value stuff that you do, the effort, the work, the focus, and you've put it into chunks, and you've taken all of the relaxation, rejuvenation, and you've put that into big chunks as well. Now, I've created this model based on my own experience and on learning from some very smart people who I'd like to pay a little bit of attribution to. One of those smart people is John O'Neill, who wrote a book called The Paradox of Success that my mentor, Jerry Ballinger, introduced me to. And in The Paradox of Success, John O'Neill points out the idea that when we start having success and we start really taking off and getting a taste of what that's like, sometimes it goes a little far, it kind of gets into our soul, and we get addicted to that work. And it's not enough that I win, other people have to lose, and I just have to be in there all the time playing the game. Arr. And what we don't do is we don't get away, we don't unplug and get distance and get involved in the things that really fulfill us, our hobbies, our families, and separate that time completely from the work that we do. Another model that was very influential to me was Stephen Covey's quadrant time management system, the 4 quadrants, and he talks about things that are urgent, things that are important, and when it's all said and done, we get distracted by things that are urgent and they interrupt us, but we don't pay attention to those things that are important, but they're not urgent. They're things that you have to proactively do, that quadrant 2 stuff. That was very influential also in my thinking. Dan Sullivan has some great thinking on this. He's the strategic coach guy. He talks about his time management system where he blocks off entire days to be focused in your work and entire days to be unplugged and entire days to do the other stuff in between. And finally, though, probably the most influential on me was Peter Drucker. And Peter Drucker is the brilliant management expert, probably the most famous management author in history, and he wrote a great book called The Effective Executive and a bunch of others. And I read that book probably 12 or 13 years ago. And in The Effective Executive, he talks about focusing on strength, knowing where your time goes. But he says something that's very simple. If you focus your time in chunks of uninterrupted, focused effort, you'll just get more done. So focused blocks, 2 hours or more is my rule of thumb. No interruptions. You'll get a lot more done. And when I put that all together and also conceptualized a little bit, I came up with this concept that I call tea time and re-time. And tea time stands for talent time. It's when you're in your talent and in your strength. And I'm going to use these 2 terms, talent and strength, a lot in this program. A strength is a talent, something that you kind of come equipped with, a natural ability that has been developed and exercised and coached. Then it becomes a strength. Inner talent, outer strength. So tea time is when you're in that talent and strength time, and when you're in business, it's that overlapping circles, kind of that Venn diagram, when you're doing the things where you have talent and strength and it also brings large results, big value, big profit. And re-time is when you're unplugged. It stands for relaxation, renewal, rejuvenation, re. Stephen Covey calls it sharpening the saw. John O'Neill, renewal. There's another gentleman I've met in the last few years. His name's Tony Schwartz. He's written several great books. One of them was called The Power of Full Engagement. He might be the best thinker I've ever seen on this. He's actually going to share here at the program. And he talks about the rhythm that you go through between these two and setting up a rhythm between being completely engaged and being completely unplugged. So what I'd like you to do now as part of this exercise is I'd like you to just consider what is it that is your talent that has been developed into a strength where when you do it in your business, it creates a lot of profit, a lot of value, brings good things long term. And then what is it, those things that you do when you unplug to rejuvenate, to renew, to completely get away, when you're totally disconnected from your business, that when you're finished doing it, you come back and you're just recharged, you're recentered. So let's just take a couple of minutes quickly and write down just a few of each. So good. Next, take out your tea time and re-time strategizer. And here are a couple of themes that we're going to be coming back to over and over in the program. And the themes are removing friction and blocks and creating conditions and structures. Removing frictions and blocks, creating conditions and structures. You might even want to write those down. Remove friction and blocks, create conditions and structures. These are systemic things that if you do on a consistent basis, you just do them all the time, they become habitual, you'll find that all the other problems will start solving themselves more easily. So the things that we're doing here, the exercises, these are brainstorms. These are to get you started. We're doing exercises to change your thinking and your habit patterns and your behavior. You're going to develop this more later. This is just something to get you started. It's to get you on the road. So what I'd like you to do in this tea time and retime strategizer is go back to this document where you figured out what your best tea time activities are and your best retime activities, and pick 2 from each list, the top 2, the most important 2. And write them in the boxes underneath activity. So you got 2 for tea time and 2 for retime. And then, what I'd like you to do is ask yourself this question. Which friction and blocks do I need to remove so that I can perform more of that activity? What are the friction and blocks that I need to remove? And then next, what are the conditions and structures that I need to put in place to facilitate more of those activities? See the 2 sides? Friction and blocks to remove, conditions and structures put in place. And then finally, action steps. What I'd like you to do is just write down one action step. One action step. So for each of these boxes, you're just going to jam through them. You're going to brainstorm through them very quickly. And for this exercise, let's put one thing in each box, 5 to 7 words maximum. You'll know what your words mean later. You'll know what they mean. This is your life. Okay, so quickly, put one activity that's a tea time activity, and then immediately, what are the friction blocks that I need to remove? Write one thing. Condition and structure I would need to put in place so that I can enjoy more of it. Third, an action step I can do immediately. Is this making sense? Clear? An example of a condition and structure? Okay, let's say that, and I'm not going to, I'm going to give you something really simple here, but let's say that one of the things you want to do is take a break every 90 minutes in your business, and you want to stop for 15 minutes and drink some water, do a little bit of exercise, stand up, move around. A condition and structure that you could put in place is in your Outlook calendar every day. You can have a reminder that goes off at those strategic points, and that's a condition and a structure that you've put in place that will pop up and just remind you every 90 minutes. Oh, ding. Oh, okay, right, does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, good. Now, you can do more complex things, like you can have someone that works on your team as your accountability partner, and you can say, I need you to be my structure. Does this make sense to you?
I get that concept. I'm just trying to apply it to my...
It's always hardest to apply it to yourself. Try, okay? And we'll do a little work on it in a second here. Okay, we're just going to take 3 minutes. You're going to jam through these. It's a quick exercise. Now, here's what I'd like you to do. Quickly, look down at your list of notes that you've taken. Quickly. Just kind of look back at some of the notes and the exercise. And think about what you learned. Did you get an aha? Did you have something that triggered there's something I could go use immediately, that if I implemented that thing, I'd get a lot more results. I just know that I would. It clicked. Did you get one of those?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Quickly, turn to somebody, preferably that you don't know, and tell them what it is that you got. You got 30 seconds, and then I'm going to say switch, and you're going to switch, and the other person's going to tell the other person quickly. You just got 30 seconds. You understand the exercise?
Yes.
And then you're going to come back. So quickly, turn to someone you don't know, say hi, go. Who got a good one that they're going to implement and it's going to make them a lot of money? Who would be willing to share? This one?
Hi.
Hi.
So,
who are you and where are you from?
My name's Carol Allen, and I'm from Eagle Rock, California, right near here.
Nice.
And it's great to be here. And what I got is that my whole life is the gray zone. I never really unplug. When I walk the dog, I make phone calls. When I'm hanging with my husband, I'm checking email. When I'm out with a friend, I'm talking about business. So I never really get re-time. And that's why everything's gray, and I'm tired. So thank you. Enough of that.
It's a good one. Good one. Give her a hand for being the first participator. And I think what you're going to find is the more you get some re-time, the more you actually make more tea time and make it stronger. Who else got something that they can apply and it'll work really well? Do you want to run over to that mic right there since it's close? Say your name and where you're from.
My name is Mike Lewitz. I drove in from Phoenix, Arizona. land of the sun. What I learned is that it's just fascinating. I'm one of those kind of people, like, I got to keep doing it and doing it and doing it until the project's done. I mean, I don't like take breaks. I got to finish. I'll stay up all hours of the night. Sometimes I wouldn't even go to sleep for 2 days just because I got to get this project done. And just looking at this and going, wow, if I just did something in 2-hour blocks or something, just stopped and walk away, I could probably get more done in less time, and my brain would be less of a cloud. And like she said, I'm tired. I'm tired of being tired. So.
Sometimes it's the intuitive thing to do, to just keep
it's so
hammering
counterintuitive to stop. And you're like, oh, I've got so much to do. So.
Good, thank you very much.
I'm Matt Gerchow from Miami, Florida. My realization was something that I've kind of been realizing. I've kind of been flowing along the lines of a lot of the stuff you've been teaching already. But what is taking up some of my time during the day is conceptualizing and spending the time to write out, I guess it's called a use case scenario for my website. And I get just buried in it, and I keep changing it around, and then, okay, well, what would the admin do in this situation? What would the user do? What would our subscribers do? And I just made a realization that I need to hire a technical writer. And then my action step is that I'm going to put an ad on Elance tonight to get that covered.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Okay, my name is Scott Saunders. I'm from Solvang, California. 20 years ago when I was in college, I heard a lecture from someone who explained that if you will study, he said, if you study between 2 and 4 hours in one block of time every day, that in your 4 years you will be in the top 1% of your field, whatever it is. And I took that to heart, and when I was in college, I went from a C student to essentially a straight A student, got me all the way through medical school. But since that time, I've forgotten that. I haven't done that at all. I've been doing multitasking the whole time. I don't do those blocks of time anymore. So that was my big aha experience.
Thank you for sharing. So write down big mistake number 1 to avoid. Find what works and stop doing it. How often we do that in life, and especially in marketing. It is impossible to overlook the extent to which civilization is built upon a renunciation of instinct. Sigmund Freud. Renunciation of instinct. Civilization being built on it. Think about the implications of that statement. Very powerful. Here's another quote for you. The aim of marketing is to know and understand the customer so well that the product or service fits him and sells itself. Peter Drucker. The aim of marketing is to know and understand the customer so well that the product or service fits him and sells itself. I want to also point out that inconveniently, our language has kind of sexist terms built into it, and originally him and man were used to describe both sexes. So please understand that I am aware of that, and every time I say he or she, I realize that it's a disconnect for some amount of the audience. So know that I'm conscious of that, and work with me. Give me some see-through. So in this next section, I want to talk about a concept that I call creating your customer avatar. And the process of creating your customer avatar involves a lot of this approach that I call see-through, or seeing through the eyes of another person, experiencing what it's like to be them. And I thought these 2 quotes were particularly appropriate. It's impossible to overlook the extent to which civilization is built upon a renunciation of instinct. It's also impossible to overestimate the extent to which business is built upon renunciation of instinct and human emotions and feelings and communication. And the aim of marketing is to know and understand the customer so well that the product or service fits him and sells itself. Peter Drucker. When you really understand your customer and you really understand what their needs are, you can create things that speak directly to them and really meet their needs. So when I started our current business about 6.5 years ago, I had some marketing experience, and I had been studying marketing for a long time. And when I discovered a category that seemed to be a good win, which was dating advice, there was a key insight, which was recognizing it as such, as a category, and not just as a product or a service. And I'm very influenced by Al Ries and Jack Trout, and we're going to talk a lot more about creating your category or niche later. But I looked around and I thought, oh my God, is it possible that this incredibly powerful desire, this drive that we have as humans, this natural drive to find a mate, to find someone to be and exist in life with, and to connect with them, is it possible that there's really no one teaching that? How to get that started? Sure, there are a lot of relationship advice books. There's nothing that teaches you how to get the initial connection going. And the stuff that I did find just didn't really connect with me.